Good afternoon, Esther. How you doing? You well?
I'm well. I am well, Joelle.
Good, good. It's good to sit with you because you're going to be working with me in a tenuous fashion moving forward because I was really inspired by a lot of the work that you're doing with Turning Point, and I don't want to talk too much as I never like to do. I like the person I'm speaking to introduce themselves and everything they're doing, and why I kind of help people understand why I was intrigued by your story, your journey, and where you're going. Turning Point. Talk to me a little bit about that because it's a magazine which I'll hand to you now.
This is the last issue that came out in the winter. So it's now Turning Point. It originally started off, I think, 6-7 years ago as Turning Point, your lifestyle, your well-being. And so this is what was published last year. It was I would say a bulk issue, so it's got over 100 pages, but that was just because I published twice last year. It's usually quarterly, and I featured, as you can see, Carolyn Griffey and her mother, and they told the solo record story with Dick Griffey, and then there's some other fantastic artists in here, old school legends, Bernadette Bascom, who was the first artist that was signed to Stevie Wonder's label. We've got fashion and health and well-being. And the ethos of the magazine is called now Turning Point Music and Lifestyle. The ethos is very much about celebrating and honoring those old school classic legends.
That was what grabbed me when I saw
Alexander O'Neill. This was in the winter.
Let's talk about the issues, but that's what grabbed me when I first saw both publications. I said to myself, this is clearly aimed at an audience that if we don't kind of cover their stories from our perspective, then we don't get to unearth some of the gems that should last the test of time, just like their legacies will. So speak on kind of targeting that area and why it became your area of focus, and also how did you get in this space? Because it's one thing to decide you want to do something, but the next thing to actually go and do it.
Okay, so how I produced the first issue, I started the first issue. I remember, I think it was 6-7 years ago, I was in Barbados. And I had just interviewed Freddie McGregor, and it was an incredible interview. And I thought, how can I get these voices, not just my voice, but how can I share their stories, share what they've shared with me on a wider scale? And I was sort of praying and meditating as you do in the hot sun, with the sea behind. And I just got, a magazine, put these interviews in the magazine. And I had also interviewed Sister Sledge and loads of other artists before, and it wasn't so much about who they are, but more so what they shared. And so that's how I started the first magazine. I just went online, how to produce a magazine, and I got a download of information. So when I say that, it's just that when you're meditating and praying, you just oftentimes get the direction of where to go. And I remember sitting in my bed in hot Barbados for the next 2-3 days, knocking out all this information, lots of interviews that I'd done before, I had put in this magazine. And I think I found a template someplace that I used, and within about 24 hours or 48 hours, I had the first semblance of a magazine. It was a little A5 magazine. It was quite rudimentary at the time. Is that the right word? Rudimentary? Yeah, yeah, basic. But that's how I started. And the main ethos was to have a bigger platform or another platform to share these incredible stories.
So you're a journalist. I ask because what you don't know is that I dipped into my inbox whenever I'm looking for someone, just to make sure they haven't contacted me before, and I saw that you had
long time
a few years ago, right? And so then that made me dig into a lot more about you, right? So you've got this journalistic background, you've always been curious, interested, dabbled. What made you get serious? And talk to me about that background that I saw.
So how did I get into writing, journalism? Way back when I started working, I've always worked in certain environments, but I was never fully in those environments. And I used to get bored really quickly in my jobs. And what I would do is, on my way into work, I'd send out an email to those in the work environment of maybe my journey into work, little anecdotes. Sometimes they were humorous, sometimes they were more about life's struggles and how how my day and what I did around those, what were the solutions. And then I started writing poetry because I was bored in a lot of my work placements, as I said. And it was during the time of my marriage, when I was married at the time, and I was looking at ways to get out of that marriage. And for me, in my head, it's like the more qualifications I've got is the more I'll be able to earn so I can look after my kids if I left this situation. And I also remember doing accounting at college one day and leaving that class. On the billboard, there was this shout out to people from the BAME community, and it was where you can win, where you could be part of an award. You can win an award, and it was in media. And I literally had 2 days to submit my application. Joelle, I went home. Stayed up all night with an idea. Got it there on the deadline of Friday. So I saw it on the Wednesday, but on Friday I had it submitted. I was I was 40 out of 760. I was one of the 40 that got through finally. And it was a Skill Set Millennium Award. And I chose to set up a website. It was called Caribbean Women Focus in the Community. And so I interviewed lots of women from the Caribbean, their stories of success, their entrepreneurial journey. And yeah, I won an award for that. And so that was the start of my entrance, I would say, into the journalistic field.
When was that?
Skill Set Millennium, that was 2000.
So you're very much an instinctive person, driven by that world within. You're not afraid to pursue. Like, talk about some of these pivotal moments though you touched on, and as deeply as you want to.
Okay, so my marriage impacted, influenced, and inspired me on many levels. So as much as I do the magazine, everything that I do is about showcasing people's voices, understanding their authentic voices, giving them a platform to share. And I know energetically that I have the capacity that allows or gives people permission to just be themselves and share. So a lot of the artists that I've interviewed, lots of the legends, sometimes they've cried on my show. I've got a show. So going back to how my marriage impacted or influenced everything that I do now, it was a very painful situation. I had to learn to grow balls, arms, everything in that situation. But one thing for me that came out was the power of communication, the power of effective and authentic communication. Because sometimes I thought I had to be psychic in there, even though I am, but I had to always be. I realized I was always fighting for my authenticity. I was always fighting for me, fighting to hold on to the essence of Esther. And yes, I lost a lot of her in that situation. But on the road coming back into who I was, I discovered a lot about what I needed to do about myself, and also what I needed to do in terms of harnessing relationships with others, especially in an intimate environment. So I learned a lot about that. And out of that situation, I've got 2 boys, Cameron and Ashley. Cameron's 33 this year, Ashley's 30.
Some wouldn't believe it.
I know, and I don't usually say that. And I've got 3 grandchildren as well.
Wow, you don't, some wouldn't believe it.
Yeah, I get that a lot, but I only share that because one thing with my boys, and I've been through a lot with them as boys, as black boys, and whether that's the interaction with the police or the interaction with just being on the street and surviving on the street, I've learned a lot about that. So everything that I've learned about my journey has been about tenacity. It has been about getting up and keep on moving. It has been about no matter what's in your way, I will go under it, I will go over it, I will go around it, if I believe in my heart that this is what I need to be doing. And yes, there was a lot of pain in that marriage. There was a lot of like I said, I had to hold on to so much. I was trying to hold on to so many aspects of me because they were constantly being challenged. I couldn't, little things like not being allowed to, and I had to interpret that later down, to cook at a certain time, to wash my hair, not, there was so much But I remember fighting back in my own way, because after a while, I realized this doesn't make sense. And I actually questioned how I got in there. But it was part of my journey. And like I said, I got two beautiful boys, as we all say, two beautiful boys and my grandchildren out of that. But for the most part, every situation that I went through, from my marriage to losing my sister, she was 38, she died of breast cancer, to all these things, I can empathize with a lot of people around me in the stories that they tell me, that they share. And I'm also an intuitive healer, so I do a lot of intuitive work as part of that. I do a lot of, I would say, mentoring. So I can empathize on many, many levels. And so that's what's got me here today.
Thanks for sharing. I think there's going to be a lot of people that want to thank you personally for sharing that as well. I don't normally dig into people's personal life on interviews like this, but I just felt that it was something that would kind of contribute to the understanding of A, why you're being interviewed, and B, why Turning Point is the name of your publication and mission, because you've had your own various turning points that I guess contribute to what we're about to speak on next, which is, where are you going, Esther? I know you've flown to America, been embraced at various levels over there, which has opened a plethora of doors. Speak on that, and just kind of how that excites you about the future.
Wow. I've dipped into the States a few times, and the last time was last year. I went for a month in September, and I ended up staying for 2 months, because I always remember coming back from Vegas to LA, and I was looking at the mountains, because you're going through the desert as you go through. And I was questioning, why am I going back to the UK at this moment in time? Because there was nothing really here for me to come back to. And I'm glad I stayed for that extra month, because so many things evolved from me staying there, you know, lots of great connections, to the point of when I came back in November, I got a call, and I had been invited to the screening of The Color Purple, and I just missed it by that much. But they had called called Deborah, Deborah Hayter, the publicist, to personally ask me. And I thought, wow, after all this time, my body of work is being recognized. And so where am I going? I can feel something really big in my spirit. I know that I'm going, really huge places. I'm here already, but I'm expanding into that more. And what is that? With the magazine, I want the magazine, I'm hoping to have that turned into an interactive version as well, but I want it to be in front of more eyes and visibility, because it's a wonderful publication, and the stories that it shares, it's all about sharing these wonderful, powerful, authentic stories that a lot of people haven't heard about before. And I say that, we can say that about any publication, but I'm just talking about especially a lot of the artists that I interview. They've been interviewed many, many times, but what I find with my publication, or even on the server with Esther, is that they often share never before told stories, and that is really rather unique. And there's lots of other great information in there to share if you are at the turning point of your life. It's got great information that can support you in re-envisioning your life, looking at your life through different filters. And so where am I going? There's a lot of other stuff I'm not going to share too much, but I've got a fashion range coming out soon called the Funky Butterfly. It came out some years ago, but everything feeds into expansion. Everything feeds into how to be your authentic you. That's what everything I'm about. And it's about dipping into your creativity, because creativity is expansive. It's like, I went to see Imaginary Friend with my granddaughter last week. And what I loved about that was it's imparting to adults, as much as life is stressful and challenging, how we can still sit in that seat of imagination and create from there. Or if you don't feel you've got the capacity to create, just to sit in it and let it take you away from being an adult.
So if I was to ask you, like I do many people who sit in that chair that you're in, how does the next 12 months go if it went perfectly? What boxes do you tick?
How did the next 12 months go? Building out my fashion range, because there's a message behind that. And like I said, the funky butterfly is for the woman who is ready to be authentic with herself, who's ready to play with life, who's ready to simply be who she is, gracefully, sporadically, creatively. What does the next 12 months look like? Do more speaking engagements, getting the magazine out there in front of people, more visibility, and lots of traveling coming up. So that's what the next 12 months, and in between that, there's loads of other things. Because as you should know, Joelle, that, life is like, you got the spider, and it's got its 8 legs. You got the spider's body, and those 8 legs anything can pop out at any time. So even though I've said this is what I'm going to be doing for the next 12 months, I'm also open to be more fluid with how I operate, so that if something falls into that space and I'm ready, I'll take it.
For those who want to follow you more closely though, tell them where they can look out for Esther Austin.
Okay, so you can go to my website, www.esteraustingglobal.biz, and my social media, Facebook and Instagram, it's Esther Austin Global, and also Turning Point Magazine. And can I just throw in there, I also do a show on The Sofa with Esther. So the main show is on a Sunday, 8 p.m. GMT, 3 p.m. EST, and 12 p.m. PST. And on a Tuesday, I do an On the Sofa with Esther, Tuesday's Words of Wisdom, where I get people to come on and they talk about their pain, their vulnerability, their challenges, but more importantly, their solution. What was the solution? And I've had some really powerful people sharing on that. And also the last Wednesday of every month, I'm repurposing a show I did last year called On the Sofa with Esther, Men Supporting Men. And that was a powerful show, predominantly for Black men, where they came and they shared about, a lot of them, I had Gerald Olsen from the Manhattans, I've had Rough Ends on there, and I've had other people from the public come in and share some of the stuff they've been through and some of the stuff they've never shared before. And I've had a few of the guys cry on my platform, so it just gives people that permission to be authentic, because when you're authentic, then it's half the burden and the load of you can be truthful and honest with yourself, and then it's easier to be truthful and honest with others, and it takes such a burden and weight off as well. So yes, just go to my website, and thank you so much, Joelle.